to evolve?
In a sense, but it's not an avatar that's detached from you. It is you in the way that you wish to configure yourself for a particular experience. Imagine that you are in an art gallery with many different pictures on the walls. They're all there all at once, but you've decided, I'm going to focus on this painting for a while, and I'm going to explore it for a while. Then you become the experience of exploring that painting. But then you can step back, go into spirit, and look at some other paintings. They all exist at the same time, but from your perspective in spirit, in a timeless state, you get to see them all, but you get to focus on what you wish to experience. It's similar to that analogy.
Okay, and you've said that we are a different person every moment.
Yes.
But you also say that we are only ever who we are now. How do these ideas go together? Can this be used to explain how we create the experience of reincarnation for ourselves without actually changing who we are?
Yes, but you must be careful about the way your language is used here, because when we say who we are, it depends on who we means. The idea of the core you, the core we, the core being that you are, the core reflection of all that is, that never changes. It's your identity, and you experience everything from the perspective of what it means to be you. But when you're talking about the idea of creating personality constructs or different representations of your core being, that can shift. So the idea is that the shell you create, so to speak, roughly, around yourself as a personality or a presentation of who you are as the core being of your existence, that can shift and can give the core being a variety of different experiences. The core never changes, but the idea of the clothing that you wear, the presentation that you create, the projection or personality that you may create for different experiences can constantly shift. So we're talking about two different levels of we or I, just to be clear.
Okay. And if we experience all the ripple consequences of our actions during the life review, wouldn't that extend infinitely beyond our life? Or is the review just limited to what happened during that certain period of that particular life on Earth?
It's a matter of relevance. If something cross-connects to something beyond the Earth, then you will experience that too as an effect. But the idea is there is a high degree of probable relevance to the idea of this specific life as this specific personality. And generally speaking, it usually remains focused on that particular personality experience because the rest of it simply isn't relevant.
And in your last transmission, you spoke about life review experience can feel traumatic in some ways to the spirit. But at other times, you've said that we experience this process without any negativity or self-judgment. Can you elaborate on this and help us understand and release any potential and fear around it?
This may not be something that you can truly understand until you experience it yourself. But if you imagine the idea of going to a movie on your planet where you're experiencing on the screen a character going through a traumatic experience, you can identify perhaps with the character. You can understand that what that experience may feel like, but it's not you per se. And therefore there is a slight detachment, even though you may be experiencing what might appear to be a version of trauma. It's done a little bit more detached, a little bit more removed than the idea of a true personal experience as you would have it in physical reality. It's an observation and an understanding that is deep, but it isn't exactly as visceral as you might expect in physical reality. It's a little bit removed.
When someone goes through like past life therapy or past life regression, and they seem to experience some release from that, how does that relate to the idea of life review? And would that change how you experience your life review?
It could, yes, absolutely. So the idea, again, is to understand that you make cross connections to other beings who exist at the same time you do, and therefore a so-called past life memory or a past life connection may simply act as a catharsis for you to let go of certain things that had to do with why you connected to that person's experience in the first place, and make it no longer necessary for you to continue to connect in the way that you did. As we have said, it's a dynamically changing process where you're plugging into people and unplugging from other people when it is no longer relevant for you to experience the connection you may have created between yourself and that other person energetically. So yes, coming to an understanding of why that connection happened and using it as a cathartic release may change the idea of how you experience certain elements of your life during the life review.
And also now, because we have television and news and everything, you're able to receive information about other people's lives that you may or may not identify with.
Yes.
And the idea of that, of hearing a story about something that perhaps a person is phobic about, and it amplifies that feeling of phobia, those kinds of ideas. Is it all about choice of recognizing you're making a cross connection to another person's experience, and you're always at choice about whether or not you need to amplify your own state of being by choosing that life to connect to?
Yes, yes, yes. The answer is yes.
So there's so much fascination on Earth, apparently, with violence and aggression and trauma and all of these kinds of things in our television programs and everything. Is this dangerous for people to be tapping into and amplifying certain states within themselves, or is it basically cathartic?
It depends on the individual and the limitations they have imposed upon themselves that determine how it is they may use that information. So again, case by case basis.
Why are humans so focused on the idea of murder and like murder mysteries and, you know, these shows that are all about that kind of thing?
It gives you a sense of control over things you believe you have no control over.
So it's just challenging to be a human being on Earth where there's a lot of violence, and basically these are coping mechanisms for us.
Yes, yes, they can be. They can be other things as well, but for the most part, they are coping mechanisms. Yeah. Again, the idea is that ultimately you will not need this. And again, remember that it's representative of getting everything out on the table because you're in the ending of the cycle of limitation upon your planet, at least to that degree. So all things have to be presented so you can really make rational choices about what kind of a reality you prefer to continue in.
Are the psychologists correct in the idea that in our history, when we had so many blood sports and ideas like that, and that now we seem to be focused on things like soccer and football and competitive sports, is this a promising transition for us to move away from violence and express it in a new way?
Don't you think so? Or would you rather retain the blood sports?
No, but that does show we've made progress, right? That we don't even seem as interested in war anymore as perhaps we were.
Yes, although obviously some individuals on your planet are.
Yes. This person is saying, this is the one thing I have not found an answer to in your many teachings. Can we shift to a reality where another person changes or heals? For example, my wife doesn't want kids and suffers from extreme anxiety. Is it possible to shift to a reality where she doesn't have mental health issues and she wants children? Is it possible to shift to a reality where a loved one heals from a terminal illness? And if possible, how does that work?
Well, again, it depends upon the individual path. Individuals can examine their belief systems, their fear-based negative belief systems, and choose to let them go, whereupon they may release the idea of phobias and even certain diseases and illnesses. As we have mentioned, your own medical professionals have witnessed that in what you typically call multiple personality disorder, that one personality can have a disease and another personality in the same body doesn't have it at all. So yes, those shifts are possible, but it's not about avoiding the issues. It's not about jumping over them. It's about examining them, exploring them, investigating them, owning them, and finding out why they're there to begin with, and then letting them go so that you have a sense of empowerment. That sense of empowerment is what will allow the shift to happen so that those particular symptoms or conditions may no longer need to exist. But it's not about avoiding it. You can't just jump over it to another reality if there is no relevance for why it was created to begin with, if there's no lesson learned, because it's there for a reason. And the individuals, whether they're experiencing it as a bystander or whether they're experiencing it as an actual individual, there's a reason why those things exist, and it requires deep understanding of the self and deep exploration of the belief systems to allow yourself to truly be empowered to make a shift with full consciousness as to why you created that challenge for yourself to begin with.
So in circumstances where an individual is faced with the potential loss of a loved one because of illness or an accident or something like that, and many people will choose at that point to pray to a higher power and ask, please, please let this person live, etc., almost coming from a place of insistence because it means so much to that person. Can you help us understand more about what's happening in that scenario? Sometimes the person lives, sometimes they don't, and the prayer doesn't seem to be answered.
Prayers are always answered, as you say, on your planet. It's just that sometimes the answer is no. So the idea is to understand that many people create what we'll call choice nodal points in the themes that they chose to explore. In other words, there's a little bit of a roulette wheel there as to which way things could go. So appealing to the idea is an exploration of the possibility that some of those nodal points may exist in the present circumstance or situation, and that a person might have set up the idea of the possibility of choosing a different path. So it's an appeal to the idea to explore whether that is so, or whether they have truly set themselves on a path that is irreversible.
Yeah, it's so fascinating because for some people, it just seems like they lose the person that they love the most, and it might be early in life, and it has a huge impact upon them. And some people are able to reinvent their lives going forward.
Yes.
And for others, somehow miraculously, the other person is saved and they go through a completely different experience.
These are all by certain forms of agreements, whether those agreements are made prior to the life or during. And there is purpose to everything and lessons to be learned in all of it. You have to look for them. You have to be open to them.
So even the idea that someone may feel abandoned by the person who died, particularly in early childhood, if they lose a parent or something like that, the challenge or the lesson or one lesson that one can learn from that kind of experience would be what?
Nothing actually leaves you. Everything is here and now. And it's about learning a different way of connecting and communicating with someone who has shifted in the way that they present themselves. The idea of teaching a child that there is a loss is what creates the sense of abandonment. But if there is no understanding that things are lost, but simply now operate on a different frequency that encourages you to stretch your senses into that frequency, it can become a powerful and profound learning experience of connection on a different level, back into the spirit, back into the true core of your being.
Thank you. This person is saying, I have shifted to a world which has very little hope and a lot of suffering. My friends, family, and countrymen are struggling and desperate. I can't help but feel responsible for their suffering since I would have to have shifted all of us to that reality with my beliefs. And what horrible beliefs they would have to be for me to be having this experience. That responsibility holds me back from shifting to a more positive experience because of guilt. How can I get out of this cycle?
First, by not being arrogant enough to think that you actually shifted anyone but yourself. You can't do that. The idea is you're not responsible for their choices. You can only be responsible to people to be yourself. You cannot be responsible for anyone else. They're making their choices. You can share guidance and ideas that may give them the options to choose different things. But if you are choosing to experience suffering and you wind up among others who are also experiencing that, they have each individually made the choice for whatever reason to be in that experience with you by agreement. You have not taken them there. You are not capable of taking anyone anywhere except yourself. So let go of the guilt that you are responsible for all those people. You don't have that power. So shift yourself into a living example of a reality that you find more preferable. And maybe as a living example, you will allow other people to choose to match the frequencies that you prefer and allow them the opportunity to shift themselves from a position of suffering into a reality of joy.
And regarding an individual finding themselves in a situation where, let's say, there's war around them and they're suffering and they want to shift their perspective, and at the same time the solidity of physical reality by having that kind of an environment is very challenging. Is there anything else you can add to how to interpret and deal with that kind of arduous human experience?
I would eliminate the way in which you ask that question utterly. And that would be the solution. I will let you ponder what we mean by that.
Okay.
Because you made it sound extremely inevitable, and it's not.
Well, it sort of reminded me of the movie, I guess it was A Beautiful Mind. No, it was some other movie where the person was in a Nazi situation, concentration camp, and
we
yet...
will no longer discuss this. We have answered it.
All right.
No more examples are required.
Okay. Well, thank you for what you have shared about that.
Yes.
This person's asking, when I actually transition to a better planet, what will happen to my family if they will not transition?
They will not transition. They will experience another version of Earth, as we have said.
And you've mentioned that we create our versions of of others with our own energy, filtered by our beliefs, such that we don't necessarily receive everything that they are sending us. I am curious how much this extends to plants and animals. How might we perceive them if we could take in everything plants and animals are transmitting to us?
You might perceive them similarly to some experiences that many of you have when you ingest teachers of the earth and go into altered states where you suddenly see more of the plant or more of the animal in terms of its spirit level, its energy level, so on and so forth. That is how you could perceive more of them.
And then you talk a lot about finding our unconscious negative beliefs, but do we also have unconscious positive beliefs? Are those activated when we are expecting something unpreferred to happen, but instead we are pleasantly surprised by a positive experience?
Yes, very often you may keep positive beliefs in a repository in your unconscious mind, and as a backup system for when you need them to break through the subconscious into your conscious mind the most. So sometimes that will be a mechanism many of you will employ to remind yourselves that you can choose to focus on the positive, even in the midst of what appears to be dire situations, and that things can shift around that and reflect back to you the idea that you have that so-called safety valve within you.
And people often talk about self-trust, saying things like, trust your flow, trust your inner wisdom. But what parts of ourself should we trust, and what parts should we question or doubt? Can we trust what feels good and right to us? And is it true that our thoughts that feel better to us are more aligned with our higher self?
Not necessarily, because people on your planet can fool themselves and can say, oh, this feels good, but what they're doing can actually be very negative. It's just that they are soothing themselves so they don't have to face the fact that they know deep down that what they're doing is negative. So it's not enough to just say, well, this feels good, and therefore I must be aligned with my true self, because of the compartmentalizations that can happen within your consciousness, where you can trick yourself into doing something negative and yet saying that this is a positive thing for me because it feels good. So I would suggest that you always pay attention to why something feels good and really go into an investigation to make sure that it is truly aligned with your core preferential self, your core vibration, and don't just take it for granted that it is. Because again, on Earth, you can fool yourself. So take the time to make sure that what you are actually doing is aligned with that vibration of your truth, your core.
So is it true then that you can't fool the universe, but you can fool yourself?
Absolutely. This is the planet of fools.
And it's all sort of like an equation of all your beliefs and your responses to the reality that determine the frequency of your being.
Yes.
And
For
that,
example, when I said yours is the planet of fools, there are some that will understand that laughter goes with that, and there are some that will take offense to it. And that means you already have a set up system of belief systems that determines how you choose to react to it. So that's a good test.
and is that part of our evolution also to be able to discern when we are fooling ourselves and when we're not? And the real litmus test is the reading by the universe of our vibrational state.
It's all about how you react to what happens. Remember, it's not about what happens, it's about what you do with what happens that determines the truth of your being.
So knowing that this is a projection of consciousness and the underlying mechanisms of how we're able to experience this can help bring you back to center.
Yes.
And help you change the way you respond to things that happen that may not be your preference.
Exactly. Because again, if you know that everything is there for a reason, then even things you don't prefer will be looked at objectively. And by staying in the positive state, you will extract the benefit from why it is there. But it takes self-examination and self-realization to be able to stay in a balanced state and know that you can use anything and everything that happens to your advantage.
And this next question actually is being answered as you speak, which is, can you help us understand how we can more consistently hold the preferred version of ourselves without flip-flopping back to the old versions of ourselves, so we can allow the preferred versions to manifest more quickly?
Again, remember the motivational mechanism, because you always choose what you believe serves you. So if you know that you're choosing things that don't really serve you, look at the belief system to find out why you believe it does serve you. And that can mean why it prevents you from experiencing what you believe might be a worse situation, even though it might not actually be. So always go to, why do you believe what you believe? Why is the motivational mechanism to believe what you believe? Why is it there? What have you attached to it that makes you believe and act in the way that you do? Again, self-examination.
We have a couple questions regarding transgender.
Yeah.
This person's asking, I'm wondering if there are transgender people on your planet. And can you talk about any safety issues of transitioning medically here on Earth? Will people on Earth eventually be able to transition without medication? And what is it that transgender people may be teaching the people of Earth?
We cannot address the medical aspect of this. It's not allowed. But yes, it's possible eventually that people can shift into whatever they wish to shift without the idea of medical intervention. It just depends on your frequency and your vibration. We don't have the idea of transgender in the way you mean it on our planet, but we do have individuals that don't necessarily express any particular gender, depending on the theme that they are exploring. The idea of why Earth is expressly the idea, or appears to be the idea at first, of only male and female, is because of the polarities that you are exploring in the idea of the density in which you are exploring it. But the idea of transgender and the shifting of those things shows you that the spirit has no particular gender at all and can really be anything. And it is a help to have a reflection and a reminder of the idea that no one needs to remain necessarily completely fixed in any one particular identity, because you contain all sorts of identities and the potential for any identity that is relevant for a human being.
Thank you. And this person's asking about ascension symptoms, how we can deal with them. If they're just the product of negative beliefs. For example, this person is feeling over the moon, excited one day, and then the next day they have a headache, they feel lower, and it's gotten better over time, but they just keep wondering, why does that happen?
As we say, pain is resistance to the natural self, and you may have remnants, if you will, of belief systems that are still not completely cleared out of your system that cause resistance in your nervous system to the higher vibrational energies. Just keep going, follow the formula. It will smooth out eventually as you let go of more negative beliefs, even little ones. And as you let go of things that are no longer relevant for you, even if they're not initially negative, you will smooth out and become more superconductive of the higher frequencies, and they will go through your nervous system more smoothly, without pain, without resistance.
And can we go at our own natural pace and still arrive at a good version of Earth? Or do we in any way have to somehow rush or push or pressure ourselves into growth and evolution in order to get to where we need to go?
We would think the answer to that would be obvious. If you're pushing yourself or rushing in an unnatural pace, that's the negative side of things and actually does not allow you to move forward. Therefore, allow yourself to find your own rhythm, your own pace. Don't drag your feet because of fears, but find the true natural pace that is correct for you, and you will wind up exactly, perfectly where you need to be.
And lastly, can you share a little bit about the state of inspiration, which I know many of us experience when we interact with you, particularly afterwards? There can be just an after effect of feeling very inspired and excited about life and all of those kinds of energies.
What you're doing in closely matching, or at least more closely matching, our vibration that we give off as an encouragement to all of you is because you are closer to being your natural true selves. That's what it feels like. And what comes with it automatically is inspiration, because you are more connected to spirit. In spirit, in spiritu, inspiration. So the idea is that when there is less difference between your physical idea of yourself and your spirit idea of yourself, inspiration comes because you're more connected to more ideas, because you're connected to more of the universe. So by matching our frequency of encouragement to be more your new natural true self, you will feel inspiration because you're being more of who you are.
Thank you so much. We very much appreciate it. And we look forward to the next time we get to speak with you.
Well, look forward to the times that you learn to speak to yourself and be at one with your own higher mind, because that's what this is all a reflection of. So we thank you, our deep appreciation to all of you. And now, please, enjoy your brief meditation of appreciation.